I'm currently the CEO at Africa Stocking, also the co-founder. So in terms of my journey so far, I have been, so I was born and raised in Kenya, went to college in the US in MIT, studied computer science, and then worked in investment banking on the kind of the technology trading side before starting the company about 12 years ago. So I've been working full-time with the business for the last 10 years. I always see businesses as we're reacting to the world, what's going on around us. I don't like having plans, to be honest. I just like, I like waking up every day knowing that anything is possible. And evaluating the current environment and trying to make a decision on, okay, so what's the best next move? And I think that's how we've landed where we are, even with the company where, right now we're helping software developers. We want to help software developers build Pan-African businesses. Right now, we're helping them connect to mobile operators so that they can send SMSs, USSD, consume 2G services, which right now I think is one of the biggest challenges that's facing financial inclusion on the continent. So you can't say you're driving financial inclusion if some of these services are not readily accessible, if you don't have software developers in particular being able to just test new services, test new ideas, experience something in their world, and quickly create an account, build something, see if it works, and see if it's something that can solve that problem. So for me, that's the other thing, like just following my instincts and seeing where are we and what makes sense. I think that has worked very well for me in my business. There's a fun and glory of being a unicorn, but there's also the pressure and pain of delivering consistent returns to your investors. And if you don't do that, then what happens is usually not very pleasant. So there's kind of that need to balance the downside and realize that the downside could be actually quite harmful to you. So for me, that's advice I'd give everyone. Hey, go in, eyes wide open, but just understand that you need to have a very strong sense of self to come out on the other side without having lost yourself or feeling like you are damaged or feeling like you're in a very toxic environment. We work in the A2P space, so this is application to person communication, and P2A, where a person communicating with an application. So you can think, for example, of the case where you go to an ATM, you withdraw some money, and then the ATM will send you a message, or the bank will send you a message telling you that you've withdrawn this much money, this is your new balance. So it kind of starts to build a relationship between you and the bank, where you know that if anything happens to your money, the bank will actually notify you. Other use cases, for example, could be you download an application and you need to authenticate yourself, or maybe you need to complete a transaction. So the application will send you a token, maybe a 4-digit token, which you enter in the application that validates that you're actually the one who is initiating the transaction. You have the phone. All the way to services like, let's say you want to access your bank account, so you can dial USSD. So this is where you can dial something like *384#, and that presents you with a menu of options, and then you can pick from those options, and let's say you can change your PIN, you can check your balance, you can do all these transactions that you would normally require a smartphone to do using the channels like USSD. 2G extends to voice as well. So voice is, the regular phone call. So you call into, let's say you call into a call center, you want to talk to someone in the business, or the business can call you. They can call you back, let's say, just if you didn't manage to talk to someone. And the great thing about 2G services is they work on any phone, any device that is connected to the network. And the coverage is usually nationwide. So it doesn't matter which phone you have, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter whether there is 3G network. Usually you just need a device that's connected to the network, and you're able to receive SMSs, you're able to send messages, you're able to dial USSD, and so on and so forth. And I think the challenge that so in Kenya, actually, what we've seen is these services are priced very favorably. So when a business wants to engage with its customers over 2G, the costing is very favorable. And that's a mix of the regulations as well as the telcos themselves, in particular Safaricom providing very favorable pricing that makes it easy for businesses to bake these products into their own applications. But when you start going to other markets, and I think Nigeria here, for example, which we've been working with, the costs are very high. So what you see is businesses are not likely to pay that cost upfront, because there's no guarantee that they'll be able to onboard that customer or get that money back. And the only businesses that I think are able to do this are banks, because the bank already has your money in their bank account. So when they send you a message, they can actually deduct the cost of that message from your bank account. But let's say you're working with farmers, you're working with, you have a healthcare solution, you have a solution in insurance, you have a clean energy solution. It's very difficult for you to actually penetrate the market the way that you should, just because of the cost of engaging these customers. And then what ends up happening is you develop all these applications, you develop an Android application, you put it on the Play Store, and you ask people to download the application. But while that may give them a better experience, in terms of when they're using the application, but then they need a smartphone. They need to pay for data, they need to have space on their phone, and the power on their device suddenly becomes an issue. So their device might run out of power much more quickly. So it's not the most effective way of reaching a large population. So, Nigeria has over 200 million people. How do you reach 200 million people if you're asking them to download an Android application? While if you think about USSD, like GT Bank *737#, anyone in the country can immediately start interacting with that business. So what we are about at Africa Talking is, how do we lower those barriers enough so that more and more businesses see the value in actually getting a short code, getting a USSD service, getting their SMS validated, so that they can reach any customer, getting alphanumeric sender ID, so the customer can identify who the message is coming from. And ultimately that starts to create the trust that you want with this customer. And down the road, if the customer gets a smartphone, they can always download your app. And by that time, you've already built that trust. Even the process of getting the app, getting the OTPs and all that is actually there's a lot of trust already when that's happening. Because the great thing with 2G services is they're almost always on. If I try and call you, I will reach you. If I dial the USSD, I'll get a response. If an SMS is sent, it will get to my phone. So I'm not wondering why the app is not working. Maybe it's because you don't have enough data. Maybe it's because all these different reasons that could start to erode the trust between you and the business. So it's kind of, okay, even as we rush towards 4G, 5G, we can't really neglect 2G. If we neglect 2G, then we're leaving a lot of customers behind, and I think that's where it becomes quite challenging for us to really see how these telcos can remain relevant to businesses going forward. So COVID-19 really it changed a lot, because if you think about it, people are told to go home. So a lot of options of interacting physically with someone were not there. So businesses had to start thinking about what's their strategy of engaging customers who are sitting at home, customers who are not coming to your premises, and that accelerated digitization. Now in Africa, it was a bit, I think it's a bit of a lagging trend instead of a leading trend. I think what we saw, for example, for payments, there were certain decrees that payments has to be contactless. So in Kenya, for example, we saw a lot of adoption of M-Pesa as kind of like the payment platform that people are going to ride on. So if you go around businesses today, you'll see a lot of them have adopted digital payments. On I think the challenge that African businesses had was just the immediate concern was cash. So it's not like businesses in, let's say, the US or in the West, we saw a huge explosion in terms of, technology adoption by businesses. But in Africa, I think that's something that's going to start to happen now that businesses can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, with the Russia-Ukraine situation, I don't know if that's really a light. But I think there's just an appreciation of the power of digitization and how that can bring efficiency, can bring access. So I think it was definitely a forcing function for many businesses. Things like e-commerce also took off. So that ability to conveniently, order a package and have it delivered to your house without having to, go and get it. So we've seen a lot of interest in e-commerce, kind of the small shops as well, and creating efficiencies along that supply chain. How do you get goods from manufacturers all the way to the kiosk? So we've seen companies that are actually, in that space taking off. But for me, the biggest gains were on the fintech side. I think that's where we saw a lot of new ideas coming in. Nigeria, of course, led the trend on the fintech side. We've seen a lot of companies coming in with solutions like providing digital wallets and, getting people to access funds on digital wallets. So that's interesting. But then that also now lends the question of how do you engage these customers and how do you keep them? How do you build trust with them? And that's where, for me, investing in 2G is actually a very great way of ensuring that these customers, whenever they need information or they need to access your business, or if you want to expand your reach for these services, you can actually leverage the 2G services, like SMS, USSD, two-way SMS, short codes, voice, and so on to really drive that adoption.